Hello to everyone. Within the scope of Marmara Urban Forum, the name of our session is Let's Complete the Cycle, uh, Intergenerational Justice and Internal Circular Economy. We will try to keep their values as much as possible. Therefore, they allow the circulation of the value and it creates a successful economy, and the entire ecosystem stakeholders will act in cooperation. We have very precious uh, presenters. I would like to give the floor to Dr. Emrah Alkaya, the GT Sustainability Research and Consultancy. He will talk about the circular economy perspective in the cities, industry, and agriculture triangle. Thank you very much, Didem. Actually, you've summarized very well the importance of today and what circular economy is. In my presentation, uh, the focus point of the Marmara Urban Forum is cities and the urban system, and how we should look at cities and how we should provide the integration with other sectors in my presentation. I would like to talk about GTE. We were established in 2008. We're a consultancy company. We are providing climate services, greenhouse gas commerce, sustainability, and circular economy for more than a decade. We've had more than 150 projects in 45 cities of Turkey, and we worked with many establishments, including private sector companies and municipalities. We are doing the climate action plan for Ankara. We worked in Istanbul. We're working with many municipalities and cities in Turkey. Briefly, there are two sectors that we are focused upon. Industry is one of our areas of expertise. We are working with provinces on the energy and carbon side, and we're especially working on the R&D projects and consultancy activities in the area of agriculture. We worked in just about all the provinces of Turkey. When starting my presentation, I would like to start with the question, why is the climate changing? There are various concepts and some erroneous thoughts. As a team that's been working on climate for years, we are relating the climate to energy. But when we look at energy by itself, we are missing out on the big picture of the issue, what we call products, the production, consumption, and we are losing the perspective if we only focus on energy on the product side in the framework of the Paris Agreement and other commitments on climate. If we want to reach zero emissions, this won't just take place with energy, transportation, carbon capture, etc. And as Didem has mentioned, we need to more efficiently use resources, and as much as possible, we should recycle resources. Looking from a sectoral perspective, the graph, there's a more detailed version. On the left side, we are still seeing the dark blue section has to do with energy, buildings, transportation, and other sides. And the climate is in the forefront, but industry and other areas of agriculture and forestry have a unignorable effect. If we look at sectoral perspective, for example, the food sector, food and agriculture, actually, the production and consumption is very inefficient. We are seeing annually a total 7.1 billion tons of food is produced, and water resources are used, chemical fertilizers are used, and energy is used. And coming to cities, when we look at the consumption point, only a very small section, a third of it, is actually given to nature as a waste. All this the process, we're only benefiting from one third of it. A third of it is used, only two-thirds are used. It's a very unproductive, and the circle is very low. We're only talking about 4% of it can be recycled, of these materials in these sectors. So how can we do it? Cities, agriculture and industry can develop more integrated solutions, and these productivity problems, how can they be solved? If we look at the dairy products value chain, we've done a few projects in the milk value chain. In order to produce milk, you need to feed animals. We are raising corn, and the animals are given this corn, and the animals are producing raw milk, and then dairy products are produced, and we finally consume them in our houses. You will only see an example here. A fertilizer, and in terms of nutrients, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, when producing them, we are using nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers in the area of raw milk production. The wastes are coming out. Some are used in the biogas facilities. There are some nitrogen and phosphorus wastes. When we consume the milk dairy products in the wastewater, there are some nitrogen and phosphorus materials. Closing this cycle, is this possible? For example, from the industry and from the urban areas, is it possible to use them in agriculture one more time? We're looking for an answer to this question in one of the projects, and the projects which are being worked on in the world, we're talking about a fertilizer, a struvite fertilizer. In order for this fertilizer to be produced, these organic waste materials, which contain nitrogen and phosphorus, can be used in this R&D project. Here, Sutash, Middle Eastern Technical University, Cranfield University, and GTE are four partners in this project. This is being supported from the Royal Academy of Engineering from the UK. There is a web page. You can get the details from this, but without going into too much detail, I can summarize that in the wastewater, the nitrogen and phosphorus, they're joined with magnesium. We are creating a fertilizer called magnesium ammonium phosphate to be used in the soil, which is a very beneficial and innovative fertilizer. We are doing a project on this. Another subject is the industry, energy, and cities. There's a similar relationship. Here, there is a project that we have completed, and there's an interesting subject here. Power generation is being used by renewable sources in Europe. It's a leading situation for Turkey for establishments and new investments. Wind turbine blades being produced. So we see the production of wind turbine vanes is an industrial process. Let's say when we manufacture turbine blades, it is very difficult to recycle them. In as much as we are using them as a renewable energy in cities, there are such problems. For example, the wind turbine blades is important branches of composite sector. And the world is looking for a solution to this problem in order to provide the recycling. What kind of relations can be symbiotically established with industry and the cities? We are researching them. Very large facilities in international companies such as Siemens and Vestas and Nordex, very large companies are trying to get these blades to be more recyclable, but we have many turbines that we possess. There's a large inventory, and Turkey is approaching this, and the turbines are wearing out, and they need to be replaced. Therefore, the Izmir Development Agency, there is a roadmap for the recycling of wind turbines, and we are the technical advisors. The project is about to be completed. We have delivered the final reports. We have small revision work to be done. Izmir is truly the capital of the wind energy in Turkey. Wind turbines production, there's a very important point. As the capacity of the wind generation, Izmir's potential is very high. The purpose is to make use of these potentials in different areas, and this recycling of wind turbines to become a solution. We have started a project. In this project, the first thing that we've done as the GTE team is to understand the current situation in the world. It's not a problem that was solved. The turbines of wind, these are pictures published by Bloomberg, created a sensation. Very huge and giant masses are buried because no solution can be found. It's called the savage application. Can we obtain an economic value from this? In this subject, especially in Europe, led by Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands, and the USA, various projects are being conducted, and the turbine that have completed their life, there are various applications, but unfortunately, there are not commercially successful implementations. Here you see a huge potential until 2020. 42,000 turbines have gone out of service. In the next 5 years, 15,000 wind turbines are coming out. When you look at Turkey, in order to find out the potential in Turkey, we had an inventory based on the technologies, brands, and ages of turbines, in which years how many turbines will come out. Here you see a map, especially the western part of Turkey in Çanakkale, Izmir, Manisa, Aydın, and the Marmara region. We can see that turbines will come out. One of the suggestions here, if you remember the cycle at the start, the industrial ones are being used for energy, and we use this electricity in cities. Can we utilize them in industry? That's what we looked at. And here there's an example in Germany in recent years. In 2016, they break up these turbines and they use them as alternative raw materials or fuel. This is one of the options. In Izmir, in the coming years, in the next 5 years to 10 years, if we see that there will be too many turbines coming out, is one of the areas of use in cement facilities. What we recommend, this is the flow chart that the turbines are taken, they're broken up and separated, and they're used as ATY and alternative raw materials. Another area in terms of cities. As I said earlier, this is the output of energy. They can be used in industries or in cities. Here we see a very innovative application. In the Netherlands, in Denmark, we saw these implementations. These are, their numbers cannot be increased, but they're very new applications. And in terms of innovation, both designers and research establishments can be brought together. It's also providing a possibility for innovative thoughts for these turbines to be used in public areas. Various ideas are developed. You see another example. For example, these are urban furniture where people can sit in different areas. It's possible to do some work in this area. We discussed this with the Izmir municipality, where we can use them and how we can do it. We will detail it in the coming times. Turbine manufacturers are going to be included. They are quite eager, and these can be based on the utilization purposes of municipalities. I wanted to give you a few examples, and I tried to keep my presentation to 15 or 20 minutes. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them in the Q&A session. Thank you very much. Didem, I can give the microphone to you. These are quite inspiring examples, and as you mentioned it, actually the entire process is included in these integrated solutions. By looking at integrally the city, industry, and agriculture, they can all feed one another and design together in the coming times. Thank you very much for the valuable information.
Yes, we will pass to our next speaker from ICLEI platform. They are supporting the circular economy and sustainable development, and also developing solutions for the circular economy.
From ICLIE World Secretariat Circular Development Team, Senior Officer. So I would like to ask you about the ICLI platform activities. So it facilitates circular economy practices for sustainable cities. And since each city has its own characteristics, they need different circular solutions to their locally specific challenges. So what's your role as a platform? What's your contribution to circular development? And how circular development connects to a broader sustainability goals? The floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Didem. I will share my screen, and you can just let me know if you cannot see it. I think it's loading. So as you mentioned, I'm Marion Guénard from the ICLEI World Secretariat. We're located in Bonn, Germany, where autumn has just started. So I will speak a bit nasally, I guess. Sorry about this. Just to introduce you to ICLEI very shortly, we are a network of over 2,500 local and regional government spread around more than 125 countries. And as such, we're representing and hopefully impacting 25% of people living in cities worldwide. We do this through our 24 offices. We have country offices, regional offices, and project offices, which hopefully helps target our offering to the local and regional needs of our members. And the way we work is that we focus on 5 main work areas, 5 pathways for low emission, nature-based, equitable, resilient, and circular development. Today we're going to talk about the circular one, and thank you so much to Emrah, Alkaya for making the case for what this is needed, so I don't have to focus on this. Rather, I will focus on how we can convince cities to work on it. Because as you were saying, Didem, it can be hard to, or let's say you have to connect it to other sustainability priorities in the city, because at the moment there is no binding target or political energy particularly focused worldwide on diminishing resource extraction or waste production. So you need to connect to other city priorities. The one that resonates particularly well is climate neutrality and how circular economy supports holistic action on climate. Emrah Alkaya touched upon this, saying that 45% of all emissions cannot be addressed through just a renewable energy transition and energy efficiency, and that we really have to rethink our production and consumption system. So that's really something that we bring in a lot of our project, always connecting to cities' climate plans and linking also to how we can measure emission savings. So we're doing this, for instance, in the work that we are doing with Turku as part of the Circular Turku project. Turku is a city in Finland, and they will be releasing their Circular Turku roadmap, and it's completely part of their plan to become climate positive after 2029. The other big link that we see, that we support, and that other international organizations are supporting is how the circular economy protects and helps enhance biodiversity by preventing pollution or resource extraction or using more nature-based solutions. We will be releasing a briefing sheet exploring these links based on examples from our network ahead of the Biodiversity COP 15 next year. The other one is less investigated by the global dialogue on circular economy, but still important. It's the social impacts of the circular economy for employment, of course, but for other topics as well, such as equitable access to resources and services, as well as opportunities to participate in sustainability projects. We conducted a project in Bogor in Indonesia with the UN Environment Programme, monitoring how a transition to the circular economy could support the creation of circular jobs. And overall, we have fair and inclusive guidelines for circular transition that we include in all our projects. And the last one is resilience, and that's something we see more and more cities taking on and linking to circularity, especially after the COVID crisis. And we saw, for instance, Glasgow, who is the host of the next Climate COP, completely link its circular economy roadmap to resilience and how the local production economy could provide fair, paid, meaningful job while building resilience into the city. So these are 4 aspects that align to our pathways and that we try to link as much as possible to the circular economy. A few facts and figures on specific priority sector, just to exemplify and make the case. So for instance, for the built environment, through circular economy practices, the CO2 emissions from 4 major construction materials, plastic, steel, aluminium, and cement, could be reduced by 50% globally. When we look towards food system, we see that circular practices such as regenerative agriculture, eliminating avoidable food waste and valorizing unavoidable food and bio-waste could offset 49% of food system-related greenhouse gas emission. And for urban mobility, for instance, expanding the lifetime of vehicle through design for the durability, repair and refurbishment could result in a saving of 0.2 gigatons of CO2 equivalent per year by 2050 globally. So we really see that, especially for climate, there are measurable outcomes. For other agenda, it's maybe harder to measure, but the outcomes are still there, and we see it across the network. Now that the question of why is kind of covered, the bigger question comes, which is how do you localize the circular economy? How can you work on the circular economy as a city? So to help answer these questions, we've launched earlier this year the Eclecirculars platform, which is the first global platform for cities to support the circular economy. So we have gathered on this platform all the different resources that we have on the circular economy, but also on topics that link to the circular economy and that are not necessarily branded as circular economy, things like integrated water management or resource efficiency. that we have a lot of experience in and wanted to bring our expertise to the forefront. So everything is on Eclair Circulars. Another interesting feature is that we have regional hubs. So you see, for instance, the logos from the Africa, the China, and the Europe hub to really capture that the circular economy will look different in different regions, and that we really want to tailor the conversation to these specific needs based on our regional offices. To make the circular economy a bit more concrete, trying to move my slide and it doesn't work. Sorry about that. Oops. So to make this a bit more concrete, what the circular economy is at the local level and how to really trigger the maximum co-benefits for climate, biodiversity, social benefits and resilience, we've created the Circular City Actions Framework in collaboration with Circular Economy, Metabolic and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So we've expanded on the well-known R's and created a framework that allows to first monitor what's already happening in a city and what could be done more based on examples from cities around the world. So if you connect to Eclair Circulars on the link that I'm including at the bottom of the slide, you will see examples from different cities across very different sectors that are implementing these strategies and the sub-strategies that are under each. We will be releasing mid-October a guide with Circular Economy, Metabolic and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on how to apply this actions framework to different sectors and really trigger the maximum co-benefit. The first city that has used this framework is Turku. It was used in the upcoming roadmap that they will be publishing at COP26. And it's quite unique in the sense that it really spans all the different roles that a city can play in the transition, from procurer to convener to regulator to urban planner. And it's applying the Circular City Actions Framework to 5 thematic areas that were priority sectors in Turku. So food, construction, mobility, energy, and water. It's also the first roadmap to include a social risk assessment for the planned intervention. So it's not just saying these interventions could have really positive impacts. It's actually assessing which risks exist and how to mitigate these risks. And lastly, it was a very bottom-up approach. Often the circular economy remains a bit of an engineer conversation focused on urban metabolism and material flow analysis, and that can feel a bit dry and a bit far away from local consideration. So this effort was really about gathering the inputs from more than 200 stakeholders representing different sectors, different levels of governance, to really screen what could be done to have a circular economy transition in Turku. If you are interested in connecting to other European cities like Turku and you are a city yourself, we have set up the European Circular City Declaration a year ago. I think it's today even, a year ago. And you can join it. There's already more than 50 cities that are part of the declaration, and we organize regular webinars on very specific topics at the European level. So that was it for me. If you want to connect, I'm happy to. I'm including my address, and we can also connect during the Q&A. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to be part of the Marmara Urban Forum.
Thank you very much for your comments. Yeah, as you mentioned, circular economy is one of the key issues for the resilience of the cities in the future in terms of urban mobility, food security, and energy. Thank you very much for your comments. Evet, bir sonraki konuşmacımız sürdürülebilir.
Our next speaker will be Sustainable Development Association's SKD, Şeyda Dağdeviren, SKD Turkey. Şeyda Hanım, circular economy do have a plastic waste issue, and the business world in the recent period have had some incentives, a non-plastic incentive, or plastic-free incentive, we can call it, all around the world. Actually, all of the systems are being actually organized according to linear economy, and plastic wastes are being the major problem of our country. And plastic itself is not all a problem, but its usage is creating the problems that we are facing. And I would like to learn from you, when we speak about the circular plastic economy, how we can create and transit to that side.
Hello to everybody. I would like to thank you again for today's invitation. I will share my presentation with you. And I'm participating this event in behalf of SKD Turkey, how recycling can be provided in plastics and the transition of the circular economy. I would like to talk some about plastics industry. In the 1950s, the 2 million tons as the plastic production. It's increased to 370 million tons. It's a very major increase. This quantity, which is produced, a fourth of it is used for packaging applications. Almost everyone, the total volumes, 42% is the plastic packaging we are contacting. In market research and shows that the size in 2020 has a value of 348 billion US dollars, and until 2028, this growth will increase. Until 2028, the economic growth of the plastics market, a major part of it, is going to be used in packaging applications. Playing a critical role in construction, automotive, electricity, electronics, agriculture, engineering, and furniture sectors are using them intensively. Plastics are low cost, multi-directional used, and high resilience. The sectors in which they are used, they provide advantages, but they also cause lots of pollution in the areas where they are used. Together with environmental losses, plastics also cause major economic losses. The new plastics waste report, which is being published, the new plastics economy report says that single-usage plastics, after their utilization life, 95% of their value is lost in the economy. 80 to 120 billion dollars of economic loss is being caused. The reason for this is that there are the selection of non-recyclable products. The packaging, which becomes a waste, provides a new waste load on the system, and that the value of the packaging turns into a negative cost. The negative cost, there's some work done on them. For example, a package value could be 1 cent, and after this use is started, the utilization of the package is used and the package becomes a waste, and the cleaning costs can increase up to 50 cents. When this packaging that's transmitted to nature, if it reaches rivers or seas, it can go all the way up to 2 euros. And the basic problem that we need to talk about is, can we stop the negative costs and can we turn it into an economic gain? And in the fight against plastic waste, was given to the cleaning of the wastes, and when the waste problem is increasing, it becomes an impossible to solve situation. There's a table which I will show. There's various scenarios here. The MacArthur Foundation started the plastic reports. it is working on various scenarios to solve the problem of plastic wastes and how they can function globally and bring solutions. As far as the present business scenarios, in this scenario, the current policies continue, the market dynamics and consumer habits do not change, and there is no value added to the system. And afterwards, the collection and elimination system scenario. This is only aimed at the reduction of plastics and the elimination systems being widened. The third is recycling scenario in middle and low income countries globally. It's based on the scenario of recycling. There are some missing points. The fourth is mitigation and replacement materials. The current business practices continue usage of biomaterials, compostable materials, and recycling plastics can be used, but there is no systemic intervention. And the last one, the circular economy approach and system changes scenario, collection, elimination, recycling, mitigation, and replacement materials scenarios, benefits, and the change of the entire system. It's an ambitious as aiming to go into action and as possible, reducing the use of plastics and being brought to the lowest possible level, and to keep the products in use for the longest possible time. Waste collection infrastructure becoming functional, and to be able to achieve the capacity, the highest being brought up to the highest capacity is the scenario that we desire and that it should be. Along with environmental benefits, it has very beneficial benefits in terms of finding solutions to the problem of plastic waste. The system change scenario compared to the way of conducting business in 2040, until 2040, the yearly plastic volumes 80% reduction, and annually 200 billion American dollars savings will be provided, and greenhouse gas emissions will be reduced by 24%. What type of change and how do we start? Utilization of products and the traditional methods in terms of raw materials, design, manufacturing, and elimination. It's a one-way value chain. These processes are almost the elimination of the product. We call them the value loss in the circular economy approach. During these losses, the resources, capacity, the lifetime, and the embedded values are being reduced, the resilience being increased, and looking at what happens after the utilization period, whether it can be turned into an opportunity or not. In order to obtain these opportunities, design is the first subject that companies have looked at. Until a while ago, products were being designed in terms of their utilization lives, and they had no ideas what would happen after the utilization life, and the wastes are causing waste management. Because generally, when you focus on utilization, a long utilization time was not being considered in traditional methods. Therefore, when a design is made to provide the possibility for products to be in use as much as possible, for their values to be recycled, preventing wastes and pollution were leading the design strategies and activities. The circular designs and everything should be reconsidered, and value loss is generally single direction. The useless plastic packaging being redesigned, and plastic packages should never become wastes, and they could be recycled with efficient utilization. In creating the circular economy, in every phase of the design process, the user's requirements and the systematic consequences should be considered, and to do designs in this manner. I'm going to stop my presentation and continue. Actually, I would like to finish the subject. A few presentations were made. Some things are being done in Turkey because a circular economy being used is not something that a single country or a single company could be successful at. Therefore, in the international community, there are many directives, organizations, various legislative work, and plastic pacts are being done. Plastic packaging is a challenge in Turkey. Companies are considering economic losses and the value loss of the plastics economy and the waste management and the pressure of waste on the environment are being felt. In Turkey, in the business world in Turkey, in 2019, TÜSİAD Turkey and the SKD Turkey have established it in line with the joint vision internationally. Various parts of the product are being understood and to create ecological solutions. It's a cooperation platform in order to provide recycling in the plastics. The importance of these formations brings different actors. This is why it's very valuable, because in plastic packaging, transition to recycling starts with the determination of the packaging, production, utilization, collection, and transformation into other products. Actually, all of these phases, there's a different actor that takes place. A different actor has different roles, and raw material users to package producers, and the recyclers of materials, and to international systems. There are very different stakeholders in the value chain. For this reason, the world, the business community plastics enterprise has a circular economy, and to become part of the solution, all of the business community and the other stakeholders are part of the solution, and for this reason, they continue their work rapidly. In order to provide recycling in plastics, what I could tell you, we're focused in the design side. Thank you very much. We would like to thank you for the valuable information you gave us. A system change is required all the way from manufacturing processes to design processes. They need to be revised, and recycling circular economy should be redesigned, and this is a very important role for the business community. The plastics enterprise is a very valuable enterprise, and companies should also, the supply chain should also be transformed. Thank you very much for the valuable information you provided to us.
Yes, our next speaker will be taking the floor from EEB, Senior Policy Manager, Pilot Barzak.
We need different approach from different stakeholders like regions, SMEs, companies, NGOs, and cities, of course, play a major role in building a sustainable future in terms of resource management, energy efficiency, smart utilities, all kind of subjects that are linked with the cities. So how do you explain the European Union action plan in terms of circular economy, and what's the role of cities to define, to build the urban circular economy? The floor is yours.
İyi akşamlar, çok teşekkürler Didem. Indeed, I will share with you a few thoughts about the European Circular Economy Action Plan with a focus on cities, and also I give you a few examples. Yes, indeed, my name is Piotr Baczak. I work at the European Environmental Bureau. We are based in Brussels, so our main work is really on the European policies. We work closely with the European institutions on developing those circular policies, both in the first action plan in 2015 and also recently in 20. And we work in Brussels, but we also work with our network all over Europe, including in Turkey. We have members as well, in over 170 members all over Europe. And it's thanks to them that we push the agenda, not only from Brussels, but also through the capitals. And we assist implementation of the ambitious European policies also at the national and local and city level. But I start with just raising again, after previous speakers, the urgency of why we are here, why circular economy is so important. In the last decades, the extraction of materials has tripled. In the same time, the extraction generates the problems to biodiversity and also climate change. In the same time, it is as a result, we generate more and more waste. Increase by 70% is expected by 2050 if nothing changes in the policies. In the same time, yes, we all speak about recycling, circular economy, but only 12% of materials used in Europe comes from recycling. So there is lack of demand for this, and I guess in Turkey it might be even less. And maybe in certain sectors it's more, but overall it probably is. And where is Turkey on that? I don't know if you see this. Yes, you see. This is the country overshoot days, and Turkey has been for a long time way beyond after European Union in terms of resources consumption, but it's now going up. Already by end of the year, already by half of the year, you are using all the resources that are reserved for you for the whole year. So already more than half a year, Turkey is consuming and producing on the credit. Kind of, it's creating a debit. The same comes here. The bio capacity per person reduces. In the same time, the ecological footprint per person is increasing. Today, Turkish economy is using 2.5 Earths on average, as compared also to other countries. Other European or American or United States is using even more, but the trend is very much quickly increasing in Turkey as well. So why we have to focus on this, and why on cities? Cities have a huge role to play here. They occupy only 3% of the global land area, but they consume over 3/4 of the natural resources. They also generate most of the global GHG emissions, and they produce more than half of global waste. But in the same time, they generate most of the GDP of the world. Also, in cities. In cities, we have a big potential because cities are independent from the national, to a certain extent, are independent from the national policies. So cities have their autonomy to regulate and incentivize to go upwards with the ambition. They can have their own strategy and vision. They have, through building the infrastructure and built environment in cities, they can already include circular principles, for example, through public procurement. And of course, they lead by example. They serve a catalyst. They are like catalysts for the regions and for other cities in the country for circular change. And they connect stakeholders. Most of the innovation happens in cities. Universities are in cities. And there is also, as I said before, there is GDP created in cities. So there is a lot of capital, monetary capital, and that can fund and scale up circular economy solutions. It was already said by Emrah and Marion, just to remind that almost half of the GHG emissions comes not from energy, but from extraction, production, especially from steel, cement, plastics, and also food production. And this has to be tackled by circular economy. Changing to renewable energy will not change much in this part of the circle. So we really have to focus so much on circular economy. But why circular economy is not only recycling? It's if you look at this graph that was presented at COP in 2015 in Paris, we see clearly that waste prevention can have the highest potential to reduce GHG emissions. And especially when it comes to textiles and aluminium, this is much more savings, and we can save through keeping the value of material as long as possible, keeping the product as long as possible, keeping textiles as long as possible, instead just by throwing it away and recycling it. So recycling, of course, does also save resources and save GHG emissions, but prevention comes first. That's why also Şeyda said that legislative action is very important, not only voluntary agreements by industry and not only individual citizens' actions, but legislation is very important. And that's what we are calling here since years in Brussels for legislative proposals and actions to address waste problems and to increase durability of products. So in the last Circular Economy Action Plan that is a part of the European Green Deal announced in 2020, there are a few actions that are very important. A lot of them focus on sustainable products to make them the norm in the EU, both products produced in Europe, but also those imported to Europe. It is also about empowering consumers and public buyers so that they make an informed decision about what they buy. So it is also about how information flows about products, what kind of information we need in order to choose better. The Circular Economy Action Plan will focus on few main components, which is ICT, electronics, batteries and vehicles. That is where we are working very much these days also. So there is a revision of end-of-life vehicles directive to make them vehicles, cars, more circular. In fact, this sector hasn't been looked at for many years. And batteries, because of the transition to electric mobility, we also have to make sure that batteries, which are very much resource consuming products and energy consuming as well, have to be as circular as possible, durable and repairable. There is also continued work towards plastics and packaging. After you remember the single-use plastic directive, there is more products on the agenda, plastic products. Packaging, there is a trend to go much more towards reuse. I will explain a few examples about that. Also, a big sector will be textiles, which is considered new plastic also, and very consuming, very energy consuming, very resource consuming, and very polluting also industry. And construction and buildings, that's very important for cities too. There will be targets to reduce waste generation overall, and also to reduce the residual waste generation. So the part that is really not recyclable by design, basically. So I said about reuse, and this is indeed something cities can already foster and support is, for example, non-packaging shops. There are more and more of these shops in Europe. I am not sure if there exist in Turkey. Of course, they exist in markets. We know how we can buy in bulk. Why we need everything packaged? This is if something has to be packaged, it can be packaged in reusable packaging. It can be it can be glass. It can be also different materials. But most important is that it is reusable, because this is what saves resources, saves waste and related costs and environmental also impact, and it also saves money. In fact, there are very interesting solutions, startups, businesses. For example, the one on the left, Dabba Drop, where they use reusable containers for food, but also the one Recircle that is in Switzerland and also now expanding to Germany, that the takeaway food is from restaurants is delivered in reusable packaging. This one comes from Ljubljana, which is the capital of Slovenia, a small country in Europe, but very, very ambitious. The waste management company is not dealing only with waste there, but in fact, they are having few shops in the city that are selling products, liquid products through dispensers, so that people can bring their own packaging and use and buy wine, buy cleaning products, even milk is possible to buy this way. Therefore, you see that it's very interesting that waste management company is acting on waste prevention directly, because that's what they have to do as well, not only looking at recycling and collection. There are other cities in Germany, also here in Brussels, that are supporting the systems for reusable cups, for coffee cups. So to reduce this stream, a very difficult stream to recycle, basically not recyclable, and to address it. So that's for packaging. But I wanted to look more at Istanbul and in Turkey in general. In Istanbul, you have 7 million tons of waste generated. I don't have recent data, but it didn't change much. More than half of waste is biodegradable. So it is crucial that this part of waste is the potential of this waste is tapped. I think Emrah spoke about this in the beginning, about the biological cycle. It is very important that the nutrients in waste, in bio-waste, are reversed back into soil. But first we have to collect it. And that's very important, where I think we should start. It's important for soil applications to improve the quality of soil and maybe replace also some fertilizers that are today often mineral and come from fossil fuels. The compost production is very important also for application in horticulture, so city culture, city agriculture. It also contributes to renewable energy, because when you collect bio-waste, you don't have to immediately compost it. You can, but it can also go through a so-called anaerobic digestion to produce biogas, biomethane, and this has also huge benefits for the climate, of course. And it contributes to bioeconomy in general. You can, out of bio-waste, you can actually extract enzymes and biopolymers to produce bioplastics out of it. Climate benefits are very big. It's about half a ton of CO2 can be saved by each ton of bio-waste collected, mostly through biogas production, but also through peat replacement, and also, of course, through carbon sequestrations in soils. Not only that, compost and taking care of organic matter from cities, from kitchen, from our food scraps, also creates creates jobs, green jobs, and that's very important also in view of the current job market in Turkey. Is it difficult? Not really. We have big cities in Europe: Vienna, Munich, London, Hamburg, Berlin, Barcelona, Ljubljana, and Milan. Milan, with almost 1.5 million people, collects over 100 kilograms of bio-waste per year. And they collect it with very little impurities, less than 5% impurities. Other countries are doing also, other cities also doing good. And actually, I want to tell you that the European Waste Directive obliges from 2023, so in 2 years, to collect bio-waste separately everywhere without any exceptions. And I wonder if in Turkey that can also be a goal. As I said, it has benefits for circular economy, for climate, but it also reduces the costs. If in Turkey more than half of waste is bio-waste, then it is the first step that has to be done and collected separately. But we also have to make sure that there is enough capacity to treat it. Okay, many cities don't have space, but it is still possible. In Milan, as I said, it's a densely populated city with more than 1.5 million people. They do it, and they do it in a very systemic way. Twice a week, there is a collection, and even in high buildings. Barcelona is also an interesting city that collects bio-waste separately, recently in Sarria, but they also expand to different districts. By one. You don't have to do everything at once. You do by districts. And they also managed to collect separately very quickly from 19% before the start of the project to 60% separate collection after a few months of the project running. The people in Barcelona are also very mobilized, apparently, because the level of impurities is only 2% in this stream. So coming back to Emrah's presentation, it is very important to take care of organic matter, but we first have to collect it. And that's the difficult part that we are helping our members to deal with. Another way to collect separately or to separate at source are composting decentralized. So local composters. Why not to have composters just next to your building? Next to the family, big building, multi-family building. That can be managed by the local community, and the compost will directly come back to the local gardens. And just to finish now, I spoke about the waste directives. We work on that on a daily basis on how to create policies at EU level, so the directives and regulations, and how to implement them in countries and in cities. And we prepared those few briefings. That one of them is in Turkish. We managed to translate it. It speaks about waste prevention and how to implement waste prevention rules and reuse laws. Just a few examples here. I will share with you this presentation so you can download it yourself. First, at national level, it is very important that we are setting targets. It is really important that the government is supporting cities by also subsidizing them and by setting the targets to mandatory targets to oblige them, but also to support. There is no obligation without support. So this case comes from Flanders. We have Flanders, which is a region in Belgium. We have a target to reduce residual waste per capita, and that is constantly revised and being more ambitious. In France, they have few new rules to tackle plastic. For example, a ban of distribution of, for free, but bottles, plastic bottles. There is no more distribution of bottles for free. That is already something. But also there is ban of wrapping fresh vegetables in plastic. And also something very interesting for cities is that in Turkey as well, because it's a hot country in summer, is that you have fountains, public fountains with water, clean water that people can drink. That will massively reduce the amount of plastic bottles that are sold and consumed daily there. Those fountains can be installed in the city, but also just in some schools, in public institutions, everywhere where the quality of water can be controlled. I will not go into details, but the part of construction waste and demolition waste is also very important, and how to address this is very much mostly generated in cities. There are upstream solutions on how to design buildings so that they are more durable and adaptable. But there are also ways to deal with currently already existing built infrastructure by, for example, just obliging audits before demolition of the building, so that the audit will tell which parts of the building are still reusable components and recyclable, and not to demolish everything like crushed and then it just generates unnecessary waste. Last point I want to say is using economic tools. This is also something we work a lot, is how by fiscal policy you can move in the city towards circular economy and better waste management. This is an example from Catalonia, which is a region in Spain, where a centralized authority is collecting money from burning and landfilling of waste. Okay, so whenever a municipality is sending waste to incineration or landfill, they have to pay the gate fee and an additional tax that goes into the Catalan Waste Agency. So this is already an incentive to reduce the amount of waste being sent to landfill and to incineration, because the municipalities don't want to pay additional tax. So one incentive is on this side. But it's interesting is that the money collected is then distributed back to municipalities, but only those municipalities who manage to reach certain level of bio-waste separate collection with good quality. So this is a double incentive. On one way, making the municipalities send less to incineration and landfill, and on the other hand, making them separately collect more and more bio-waste, because this is the stream that is recognized as a crucial. I invite you to check our materials, which we have a lot on circular economy. We have a team here working on all different streams. Me, myself, I focus on waste policies, but we have people also looking at, real circular economy from upstream solutions for textiles, buildings, products, ICT, electronics, and so on. Packaging as well. I invite you to check our newsletters and to get in touch with me whenever you have more questions, and I'm happy to collaborate more. Teşekkür ederim. Çok teşekkürler.
Mr. Barzak, thank you very much. This was a very inspiring speech. And as you say, recycling is very important, but prevention comes first. And during this time, regulations will play a major role, but we also try to think in a sustainable way, like the clean water fountains, like the example of clean water fountains. And the Green Deal also will have a very important impact in terms of sustainable production, sustainable products, mobility in all kind of industries. Thank you very much for your comments. Evet, şimdi soru cevap.
Now we will have Q&A part. Our participants, if you have any questions, Emrah Bey was obliged to leave because he was urged to attend another meeting. Emrah Bey left us because he was in need of attending another meeting. If you have any questions for Emrah Bey, we will send you his email, so you can email your questions. When we are waiting our questions, I would like to return back to our speakers, and I would like to ask a question.
As all of our participants have mentioned, a major cooperation is required amongst all the stakeholders. Companies have a very important role, and on the public side, the same entrepreneurship, the same environment should be prepared. How do you see this cooperation? Is the business community moving faster in terms of the initial action to increase the cooperation between the public and the business community? What should be the methods? Whichever one of our speakers would want to answer this.
Yes, please. Thank you.
First of all, from a city perspective, working with business meets many regulatory hurdles. So working with business beyond procurement, especially, or with the private sector beyond procurement, is also necessary to foster innovation. Some of the ways in which cities can support business innovation include, for instance, setting clear targets and a framework, a roadmap towards what they want to achieve. Because what we've heard from some of our members is that sometimes they have plans for circular solutions, but it doesn't meet a local supply. There is not a local supplier that could offer this solution. This is true, for instance, for, let's say, even waste collection vehicles that would be powered by energy. This is not yet available from the market. So making clear the goals that local government has early on allows for this innovation to be taken on locally later on. Consistent messaging is quite important. And then we have a lot of work at ICLE on circular procurement and how to include circular criteria in procurement so that we can, so that local governments can support the market for circular alternatives.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do any of our speakers wish to make a comment? I would like to make a comment because I talked about the perspective of plastics. Both the business community and the public sector to have a new model and arrangement that the economy created. The transition to recycling can be difficult. I talked about plastics initiative. This enterprise, this initiative is a volunteer organization. There are 4 focus areas for in terms of the mitigation and the elimination of wastes. I would like to share a screen with you to make it somewhat of a summary. We can see that companies actually, even in a volunteer organizations, they are being challenged because the thing that they want to put into motion is not something that they can do on their own or in line with the directive. It requires a huge collaboration. Here the value chains being working in various areas. They need to do work in these areas. 34 companies have worked towards mitigation of plastics until 2023. 43,000 tons of plastic reduction was their objective. One of them is the problematic plastics being eliminated. There are not very rigid directives, such as in the EU. And in the same manner, from single-use to reuse, transition is the subject. The increase of content, recyclable and renewable sources to be used for producing plastics, and at the very end, the 100% reusable, recyclable, or compostable packaging should be the target. In line with these objectives, if you assess the companies, there doesn't seem to be any challenges. The productivity or efficiency of resources, utilization of less sources, and to going to models which are reusable and on a volunteer basis. Actually, the green agreement that's going to go in force in the USA in the area of plastics packagings, there will be important changes. And on a volunteer basis, when companies get moving, since there is no legal obligation, they provide a competitive advantage in a recycling environment. Therefore, without waiting for legal changes. It's important to get moving. With this point of view, I wanted to support the issue. Thank you very much, Didem. We have a question. In a circular economy, the participation of citizens from childhood, do you have such work? Creating awareness in society and to spread this process to all parts of the society. Do we have any participants who wish to answer this question? Again, as I would like to talk about competition in Turkey. We have certain requirements. Turkey Circular Economy Platform as Competition Turkey since 2015. We are working under the Circular Economy of Turkey. Under the heading, we have work for Competition Turkey. And in companies, financial circular support is being provided with this service. We are providing training for circular economy in 2019 to 2020 in 97 countries with 190 participants. We had training. The competition Turkey work is being conducted for triggering an initiative in Turkey in a what we call companies should provide this so that companies and users must be aware of this situation. In the work we are doing, it has to do with the perspective of the business community. I wanted to share some information regarding this. From Turkey, since I'm the only participants, there are some individuals who are interested in the circular economy. In companies, individually, there are some interested employees. They are triggering a change in their companies and they participate in these trainings. I hope I've answered this question. Thank you very much, Şeyda. As you said, the increase of this awareness with these trainings is very important. As you mentioned in the previous question, on the volunteer basis was the way that it ran in the business community. Regulations, the European agreement, and these companies will provide the realization of this in a very realistic manner. Green investments will have a very important role, and green employment is very important. How do you assess the what should be the steps that companies should take? Again, in the work that we are doing, many companies are providing training and allow them to trigger the circular manufacturing, and we teach a methodology and how to go from the linear chain to circularness. And in order to do this, they need to invest on some technologies, and circular vouchers is the service. The circular economy platforms companies that are members to this should have more opportunities to be analyzed and to increase their capacities. It's a technical consultancy that we provide. Circular economy is a new topic in Turkey, as some companies have technical consultants and they need training. In addition to this, the European Development Bank has various supports, and banks are providing various projects regarding this subject. I want to share these, and from the side of investments, how companies can take the initial steps. Thank you very much. Is there anybody who wishes to make another comment in the scope of the European Union, how companies' priorities are advanced, how they provide use for these companies? Would you like to make any comments in these subjects?
Yes, I will not reply directly to your question because I'm afraid we are moving the discussion into the individual actions of companies and teaching children and awareness raising, which is all important. And I applaud SKD or Şeyda for that your companies are doing so good, so much. But from European perspective, from our experience also, we see that without legislation, we will not achieve anything. Also, only our members around Europe are putting a lot of resources for teaching. They are having classes with kids and all, but it is far away from what has to be achieved at legislation level from Europe, for example, or the governments. I also encourage Turkish government, Sefer Atik, to be bold enough to set the level playing field so that all companies, not only the most ambitious, which I applaud again, but not, otherwise only the most ambitious will go forward, but majority will unfortunately still produce in a linear way and unsustainable. Also focusing on kids only, it's great, but as I said in the beginning of my presentation, the urgency is high. Climate change is there. We are losing biodiversity every day. We cannot wait 20 more years until our kids become adults to make decisions about the economy. We need changes now as soon as possible, and we need all the markets to move. And that's why we need some, probably a bit more radical solutions where, of course, everything has to be done in democracy and consulted, but the role of cities governance and national level governance is to be bold enough and to follow best examples from all over the world on implementing those examples or implementing strong policies, because the time is high to really move away from circular economy.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it's very true. We have no time. We need to act immediately. Without regulations, no change can take place. But we need to accelerate these changes, and social awareness is very important, because as consumers become aware, this conversion will become faster, and arrangements' importance and their indispensability is very obvious. I would like to thank all our participants for sharing their valuable views, and I'm ending our session. Thank you very much. Have a good day.